It's not, for example, my son is 1 year old. He's fearless. But that's not the fearlessness we're talking about. That's a deep, deep ignorance about consequences. And so if I put him at the edge of a 30-foot cliff, he would jump off, laughing the whole time. Have no idea. I don't want to encourage that. Fearlessness, by definition, is the absence of fear. And so, in true fearlessness, the issue of fearlessness does not arise. If we imitate fearlessness, if we imagine, oh, fearlessness looks like this, we're missing the point. Because all we're thinking about is fear. Fearlessness isn't concerned with what I'm talking about tonight at all. It's not an issue. There's a really interesting teaching in the Buddhist world about generosity. It states that there are four. That there are 4 kinds of generosity that we can practice. And the first is more or less what we imagine generosity to be. It's something quantifiable. We share resources. Maybe we share our money. Maybe we share food. Maybe we share time. Maybe we give our energy to someone and we help them move that heavy thing. This is very important. And what this teaching says is that if you practice that kind of generosity, even if you kind of force yourself to do it, even if it doesn't feel natural to you, you know, we'll do something generous and then we'll say, but I'm not a generous person. That doesn't mean anything. In the moment of the act of generosity, you are generosity. And your story about whether that fits the rest of your life or not is really separate. So you can fake it if you want. You give something. Some little thing to someone. And what this teaching says is that in doing that, you're opening yourself up to the second level of generosity, which is protection. To protect someone. To protect something. To protect an idea. This goes beyond giving something away. Because now we're including something in our idea of our responsibility. When you see a can on the street, you pick it up and you put it in the garbage. It's such a small thing. On one level, we could say, well, it's just a gift to the person who would have had to do that anyway. But it's probably also an act of protection. Do you understand? You're playing into a larger process by making this small gesture. And you do it, and then the next day you do it again. And then the next day you do it again. It's not so complicated. But this idea of generosity is expanding. I'm going to skip number 3 to tell you number 4 is what we call transmission of the Dharma. It's making a teaching of your life. It's offering something that's much bigger than what we can describe. And I skipped number 3 because that's where I want to spend my time. Because number 3, we say, is fearlessness. That's the generosity. And so you give something, and in giving something, you realize that you can afford to give something. And then you protect. And in the act of protecting, you realize that you have more room than you thought. And as you start to let go of this idea of what is mine and what I have to protect, you find that all of this anticipation is really useless. And you start to reside in this place where fear is not relevant. And so fearlessness becomes just another name for nothing left to lose. The other classical Buddhist teaching, I think, that speaks directly to this is what we call the First Noble Truth. Everyone, if you took high school Buddhism class, you had to learn the 4 Noble Truths of Buddhism, and it was probably the only thing they taught you. And the first one was that all life is suffering, which just sounds so depressing. But this word suffering is a translation of what we call dukkha. And dukkha is actually much more subtle and much broader than the idea of suffering. It speaks to a kind of dissatisfaction, a feeling that something is not right. And what the Buddha said was, we always feel this a little bit. In our worst moments, we see it clearly. In our best moments, we don't see it at all. Because what we're saying is, I wish it was like this all the time. But we can just as easily translate dukkha as fear. And say that this first teaching is that our lives are characterized constantly by fear. Anytime we feel that something is missing, it creates in the tiniest way this anxiety. If I feel that I am missing something, that's fear. And again, when I look around at my life and I say, is this the whole thing? That's a kind of fear. I don't want my story to end here. I don't want to be done. I don't think that I'm fully cooked. Not yet. I don't think that my life is fully cooked. I'm on chapter 9. But chapter 12 is great. Huge things happen. And everything I've been doing has been building toward that. And if you would just let me get to chapter 10, it would be obvious where I'm going with this. But when I'm on this word on the page, that's the last word of the book for me in that moment.